The moment Richard watched his wife sell her wedding ring to buy him medicine, he knew he had made the biggest mistake of his life. Richard Thompson sat in his lawyer's office, tears streaming down his face as he signed papers that would change everything. But this wasn't about money or business deals. This was about love, betrayal, and a test that went horribly wrong. Let me take you back to where it all began.
Richard had built his empire from nothing. Starting with a small tech company in his garage, he worked 18-hour days for 15 years until Thompson Industries became worth $2.3 billion. He had everything money could buy: mansions, private jets, and luxury cars. But lately, something had been eating at him. "How do I know who really loves me?" he asked his reflection every morning. You see, Richard grew up dirt poor. His mom worked 3 jobs just to keep food on the table. He knew what real struggle looked like. But now, surrounded by people who smiled at his wealth, he couldn't shake the feeling that everyone around him was fake. His wife Sarah had married him 5 years ago, back when he was only worth a few $1,000,000. His brother Mike always came to him for money. His best friend Tom from college never missed a chance to hint about his financial problems. Even his own parents seemed more interested in their monthly allowance than their son. "I need to know the truth," Richard told himself one rainy Tuesday morning. "I need to see who these people really are when I have nothing." That's when he came up with the plan that would destroy his life. Richard called his most trusted lawyer, James Morrison, the only person who knew about his secret test. He said, "I want you to freeze all my accounts. Make it look like I've lost everything. Bad investments, fraud, whatever story works. I need everyone to believe I'm broke." James looked worried. "Richard, are you sure about this? This could backfire badly." "I have to know, James. I have to know who really loves me and who just loves my money." So they created the perfect storm. News broke that Thompson Industries was under federal investigation for fraud. Richard's assets were frozen by the government. His credit card stopped working. His bank accounts showed zero balance. Within 24 hours, Richard Thompson went from billionaire to broke. The first person he tested was his brother Mike. Richard showed up at Mike's house looking defeated and desperate. "Mike, I need help. Everything's gone. The feds took it all. I don't even have money for food." Mike's face changed instantly. The warm smile disappeared. "Oh, man, that's really tough, Rick. But, Jenny and I are barely making ends meet ourselves. The kids need new school clothes, and our mortgage payment is due. I just need somewhere to stay for a few days. I wish I could help, but we don't have space. Maybe try Mom and Dad." Richard's heart sank, but he wasn't surprised. Mike had borrowed over $200,000 from him over the years, always promising to pay it back when things got better. Next, he called his parents. "Richard, honey, we heard the news. We're so sorry, but we can't help. We're living on Social Security, and you know how tight things are. Mom, you've been getting $5,000 a month from me for 3 years. "Well, yes, but we've gotten used to that lifestyle. We can't go backwards now." Richard hung up, feeling sick to his stomach. His best friend Tom was even worse. When Richard explained his situation, Tom laughed nervously. "Dude, I always told you money doesn't buy happiness. Maybe this is a blessing in disguise. You should embrace this simple life." "Tom, I need help. Real help." "Look, I'd love to help, but I'm not exactly rolling in cash myself. Maybe try getting a job at McDonald's or something. Build character, This was the same Tom who had borrowed $50,000 just 6 months ago for his daughter's wedding. By the end of the first week, Richard was staying in a cheap motel, eating gas station sandwiches, and watching his lifelong relationships crumble. Everyone who had claimed to love him had vanished the moment his money disappeared. Except Sarah. When Richard came home that first night and told Sarah about the investigation and frozen assets, she went pale, not because of the money, but because she saw how broken her husband looked. "Hey," she said, pulling him into her arms, "we'll figure this out together. Money comes and goes, but we have each other." Richard felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Sarah was different. Maybe she really loved him. But as days turned to weeks, Richard's test became a nightmare he couldn't escape. Sarah took on 3 jobs to support them. She worked at a diner from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., cleaned offices from 3 p.m. to 7 p.m., and delivered food until midnight. Richard watched his beautiful, intelligent wife, who had an MBA from Harvard, work herself to the bone for minimum wage. She never complained. Not once. When they couldn't afford rent on their apartment, Sarah found them a tiny studio in a rough neighborhood. When they couldn't afford groceries, she started shopping at food banks. When Richard got sick with pneumonia and they couldn't afford the doctor, Sarah did something that broke Richard's heart. She sold her wedding ring. Richard was lying in their tiny bed, fever burning through his body, when Sarah came home with medicine and soup. "Where did you get money for this?" he asked weakly. Her hand went unconsciously to her ring finger, now bare. "Don't worry about it. Just get better." That's when Richard noticed. The ring he had given her, the ring that cost $200,000, was gone. "Sarah, your ring!" Her eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. "It's just a piece of jewelry, Richard. Your health is more important than any ring. We can always get another one when things get better."
Richard started crying, not from the fever, but from guilt. His wife had sold the symbol of their love to buy him $20 worth of medicine. But Sarah wasn't done showing Richard what real love looked like. As months passed, Richard sank deeper into depression. The guilt of lying to his wife was eating him alive, but he couldn't figure out how to end the test without destroying their marriage. Sarah noticed his mental state deteriorating. She would hold him while he cried, never knowing that his tears were from shame, not financial stress. "I feel like such a failure," Richard would sob. "You're not a failure," Sarah would whisper. "You're the strongest, kindest man I know. We'll build something new together. I believe in you." She started encouraging him to pursue his old dreams. Before he got rich, Richard had wanted to be a teacher. Sarah found information about substitute teaching positions and community college classes. "Maybe this is our chance to do something meaningful," she said. "Money never made you truly happy anyway." She was right. Richard realized that his happiest memories weren't about business deals or luxury purchases. They were quiet moments with Sarah, cooking dinner together, watching movies on their old couch, talking about their dreams. But the test continued, and it kept getting worse. One night, Richard overheard Sarah on the phone with her sister. "No, Lisa, I can't take money from you. Richard's pride is already destroyed. If he knew I was borrowing money from family..." "Sarah, you're killing yourself working these jobs. Come stay with us for a while." "I can't leave him, Lisa. He needs me now more than ever. When we said for richer or poorer, I meant it." Richard pressed his ear to the door, tears flowing. "Do you ever regret marrying him?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. "I regret that he's in pain. I regret that the world has made him feel worthless, but regret marrying him? Never. I didn't marry his bank account, Lisa. I married his heart." That night, Richard made a decision. He couldn't continue this lie. Tomorrow, he would tell Sarah the truth and beg for her forgiveness. But when he woke up, Sarah was gone. On the kitchen table was a note. "Richard, gone to work early. Made you breakfast. Eggs and toast in the fridge. Remember, I love you for exactly who you are. Always have, always will. S."
Richard stared at the note, written on the back of an unpaid electric bill. His wife was working herself to death for a lie. He grabbed his phone and called James. "End it," he said. "End it today. I don't care how you do it, but I need my life back. I need to tell Sarah the truth." "Thank God," James said. "I've been waiting for this call for months." That afternoon, James held a press conference. The investigation was revealed to be based on false information. Richard's assets were unfrozen. Thompson Industries stock soared as investors realized the company was solid. Richard rushed home to tell Sarah the news, to confess everything, to beg for forgiveness. But Sarah wasn't there. She was at the hospital. Richard found her in the emergency room, unconscious. A doctor pulled him aside. "Are you the husband? Your wife collapsed at work. Severe exhaustion, malnutrition, and stress. She's been pushing her body beyond its limits for months." Richard sat by the bedside, holding her thin hand. She had lost 30 pounds during his test. Her beautiful hair was dull and lifeless. Her skin was pale and dry. "What have I done?" he whispered. When Sarah awoke, the first thing she said was, "Richard, are you okay? Who's paying for this hospital room?" Even lying in a hospital bed, her first concern was for him. That's when Richard broke down completely. "Sarah, I have to tell you something terrible." He told her everything. The fake bankruptcy, the test, the lies. He watched her face change from confusion to shock to something that looked like betrayal. "You mean all these months, everything I went through, was for nothing? I'm so sorry, Sarah. I thought I needed to know who really loved me, but I already knew. It was you. It was always you." Sarah stared at the ceiling for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "You watched me sell my wedding ring? You watched me work 3 jobs? You watched me worry about rent and food and keeping you safe? And it was all a test? Sarah, please. I need you to leave. Sarah, please, just leave." Richard left the hospital feeling like his world had ended. And maybe it had. For weeks, Sarah stayed with her sister. She wouldn't take Richard's calls or read his texts. He sent flowers, letters, gifts. Everything was returned unopened. Finally, she agreed to meet him at a coffee shop to discuss divorce. Richard arrived early, his hands shaking as he waited. When Sarah walked in, she looked healthier, but distant. She sat across from him like he was a stranger. "I've been thinking about us, about what happened. Richard, I know I destroyed everything, but please, let me make it right." Do you know what the worst part was? It wasn't the poverty. It wasn't the long hours or the cheap food or sleeping on that awful mattress. Richard waited, afraid to breathe. The worst part was watching the man I loved hate himself. Watching you cry at night thinking you were worthless. Watching you give up on your dreams because you thought you had failed. Tears ran down Richard's face. "I held you while you sobbed about being a failure, Richard. I told you every day that you were enough, that I loved you exactly as you were. And you knew the whole time that it was fake. Your love wasn't fake, Richard. Your love was the only real thing in my whole life. But your pain was fake. Your struggle was fake. Everything I was trying to heal and support and fix, it was all fake." She pulled out divorce papers and set them on the table. "I can forgive you for lying about money, Richard, but I can't forgive you for lying about pain. I can't forgive you for letting me pour my whole heart into healing wounds that didn't exist." Richard stared at the divorce papers, then at his wife's face. She looked like she had aged years in the past few months. "Sarah, please, I love you more than my own life. I know you do, and I love you too, but love isn't enough anymore. Trust is broken, and I don't know how to fix it." She stood to leave, then turned back one more time. "For what it's worth, you got your answer. You know who really loves you now." "Sarah, wait!" But she was already walking away. Richard sat that coffee shop for hours, staring at the divorce papers. The richest man in the state, and he had lost the only thing that ever mattered. 3 months later, Richard sat in his lawyer's office signing the final divorce papers. He had given Sarah half of everything, $2 billion, but she had only taken enough to buy back her wedding ring and start fresh. "She said she didn't marry you for money," James told him. "She proved that by leaving it behind." Richard nodded, unable to speak. But this story isn't over yet. Because sometimes when you lose everything that matters, you finally understand what love really means.
Richard spent the next year not trying to win Sarah back, but trying to become worthy of the love she had shown him. He started a foundation for families struggling with poverty, families like they had pretended to be. He volunteered at homeless shelters and food banks. He began teaching business classes at community colleges. He didn't do it to impress Sarah or win her back. He did it because her love had changed him. She had shown him what it meant to love someone unconditionally, and he wanted to pass that gift forward. 1 year after their divorce was finalized, Richard was volunteering at a food bank when he looked up and saw a familiar face. Sarah was there too, serving meals to families in need. Their eyes met across the room. For the first time in over a year, Sarah smiled at him. After the volunteers finished for the day, they found themselves walking to their cars together. "I heard about your foundation," Sarah said quietly, "and the teaching. I'm trying to learn how to love the way you do, unconditionally, without tests or conditions or fear." They reached Sarah's car. She turned to face him. "Richard, I need you to know something. I never stopped loving you. Even after everything, even through all the anger and hurt, I never stopped." Richard's heart jumped, but he forced himself to stay calm. "I know I broke your trust. I know I hurt you in ways I can never fully repair. But Sarah, if there's any chance, any possibility that we could try again." Sarah looked down at her left hand where her wedding ring caught the streetlight. "I never took it off," she said softly. "Even after the divorce, I couldn't take it off." Sarah. She bought it back not because she missed the ring, but because she missed what it represented. She missed us. Richard stepped closer. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that maybe we could try again. Slowly, carefully, with complete honesty this time." Richard felt tears of joy streaming down his face. "I promise you, Sarah, no more tests, no more lies, just truth and love and working every day to deserve what you've given me." Sarah reached up and touched his face. "We'll need counseling and time, and you'll need to rebuild my trust brick by brick. I'll spend the rest of my life rebuilding it if I have to." Sarah smiled through her own tears. "The rest of our lives? Sounds about right." 2 years later, Richard and Sarah renewed their wedding vows in a small ceremony at the community center where they both volunteered. Instead of expensive flowers, the decorations were handmade by the kids from the after-school program they ran together. Richard's vows were simple. "Sarah, you taught me that real wealth isn't what you have, but what you give. You are the richest person I know, and I promise to spend every day trying to love like you do." Sarah's vows made everyone cry. "Richard, you asked me once if I would love you if you had nothing. The answer is yes, because when you had nothing, that's when I loved you most. Not because you were broken, but because that's when you let me love you completely." As they kissed, Richard realized something amazing. He had started this whole journey trying to find out who really loved him, but he had learned something much more important. He had learned how to really love someone else.
The richest man in the room wasn't the billionaire in the expensive suit. It was the man who had finally learned that love isn't about what you can get from someone. It's about what you're willing to give. And sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is the chance to show you how much they love you. Not through a test, but through trust. Richard never tested Sarah's love again. He didn't need to, because real love doesn't need to be tested. It just needs to be treasured.